Sometimes life is wonderful, and sometimes it's not. Cherish the good, but always be prepared for life's challenges. At Private Healthcare, we provide the peace of mind you deserve. With private healthcare, you'll get the coverage you want and healthcare you need. If your employer doesn't supply healthcare coverage and you don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, you need to give us a call right now. Private healthcare is private health insurance for ages 65 and under with medical, dental, vision, and even prescription coverage. When life comes at you unexpectedly, you need to be ready, and health insurance is your financial safety net. Health insurance has never been so easy and affordable. If you're looking for health coverage at the best price and your annual household income is $35,000 or more, give us a call at 800-733-6860. 800-733-6860.
Welcome to the Turnpike Sports Spotlight. Dave Weishottle with you. It's getting toward the end of the year, which means you better start getting your receipts and your paperwork ready for taxes, especially if you won some money at your favorite casino, sportsbook, or racetrack. Taxes are a complicated subject that I know a lot of gamblers out there have questions about, and luckily we have a returning guest that's going to clear up a lot of things. He is accountant Miklos Ringbauer, who is the founder of accounting firm MiklosCPA out of Los Angeles, and he is on the line with us right now. Miklos, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Great to be back.
It's always great to have you back. I have always stressed for people who visit casinos or sports books or racetracks on a regular basis, they should keep their receipts or have some kind of idea what their wins and losses are in order to properly file their taxes. And it seems like this year more than ever, they should really pay attention to this issue because a new report was just released stating that the IRS left about $1.4 billion on the table between 2018 and 2020 because of underreported taxes on gambling winnings. As an accountant who does this for a living, how important is it for recreational and professional gamblers to keep track of their winnings and losses for tax purposes? Because the IRS is looking.
Absolutely, you're right about that. And what we have started to discover that for people who just occasionally gamble, they completely forgot about the winnings and the W-2Gs that the casinos or any of the other establishments are issuing to them. Just recently had to do one of those where 14 W-2Gs were not reported originally by a taxpayer. So it is very crucial.
Now, before we get into the specifics, what is the overall concept of taxes and gambling? Because most of the time when people go to their casino or log on to a sports book, they're not even thinking about taxes. What should they keep in the back of their mind when they're doing these activities throughout the year?
It is very important to understand that all winnings are taxable. Whether you won $10 or whether you hit the jackpot, it is 100% taxable. And you need to maintain your records because the good news on the federal level is that any wagering bet that you have done throughout the year can be offset against your winnings if you are itemizing your taxes under Schedule A. So it is important to remember to retain your receipt, keep a track of your activities because not every dollar will be in that case taxable.
One of the great things about doing this show is not only there are professional gamblers out there listening, but there are also recreational gamblers listening. Whenever we're talking taxes, there has to be a differentiation of whether you're a recreational gambler or a professional gambler. What is the difference between the two, and what does it mean regarding taxes?
It is a day and night. Recreational gambling is purely just having fun and playing the slots or, being at the racetracks. Professional gamblers are what you have heard about going to poker tournaments or some other areas that they are essentially running the activity as a trade or business. And there's a very big difference on how taxes are treated and where the taxpayer has to report it, the income. Most taxpayers will fall under the recreational gambling category because that's not their livelihood, that's not their trade or business. However, if a taxpayer who is listening and they are continuously, that is the 24/7 activity that they do as a business, then they have a lot more opportunity to treat the activity as a business and offset some of their expenses, and where they are treating those winnings as such on their return.
What is the criteria for a gambler to be considered a professional? I mean, do they have to spend a certain amount of activity gambling? Do they have to declare themselves a professional gambler? And for tax purposes, is there a benefit for a person to be considered a professional gambler?
A professional gambler is depending on throughout their year of activity. Are they holding themselves out to be a professional gambler? They are going to tournaments. They are going to all of these different events on a regular and continuous basis. The best way I could express this as, for example, using an accountant. If I am doing tax return throughout the whole year, I'm an accountant. If I am just doing my taxes on April 14th because I have to file my tax return, at that point, I'm just self-preparing my taxes and not a professional accountant. Same thing applies for gamblers. So if throughout the whole year, my revenue, my income is mainly dependent on the activities that relate to gambling, I can, of course, do sponsorship. You have heard all of those people who are professionals and they have all of these different deals that they sign with casinos or for branding purposes. That's still part of their image, their business, their likeness, and all of those things relate to your gambling activity. But when I'm only playing for fun and I go 3 times a year or 4 times a year to a casino nearby my house, clearly I'm not.
A lot of times when it comes to being a professional or a recreational gambler, those lines have been blurred, especially I'm sitting here in New Jersey where people play online every day. And I know the IRS has a test they use on whether someone is a professional gambler. What are some of those factors that the IRS use to test whether someone is a professional gambler?
How are they maintaining their records? How much time they devote to this activity? Is the main source of income relates to the gambling? What type of participations they do? Now, can a gambler be only 100% an online professional gambler? Absolutely.
Okay.
There is no requirement that I have to go to a physical location. It is truly how I am holding myself out for the entire year and what way I am treating the gambling as a professional activity or as a hobby.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big question in a lot of states that have online casinos and online sports betting and online everything. Is there a difference between if you're playing online or going to a casino? And from what I'm hearing from you is no, that's if you're playing online, it's like if you drove to a casino, that's pretty much the same thing.
Absolutely, because it's the activities and the way I am holding myself out as a taxpayer for the entire year or multiple years. And what am I participating in? How I am handling my other affairs throughout the year. For example, if I have a 8 to 5 regular continuous business activity where I'm an employee of a business and I'm in the evenings I play and I support myself from the gambling, or am I supporting myself from a W-2 type of an income, makes a very big difference.
Tell me how gambling income is computed. Certainly federal taxes and state tax regulations have to be taken into consideration. But as a general rule of thumb, is there some kind of equation that you use to compute how much taxes will be taken out from gambling income?
Absolutely. Let's break up the discussion into two folds. One, the casual gambler versus a professional.
Okay.
A casual gambler, when they are winning the W-2G, which is the reporting mechanism where the IRS receives the winnings, and there are different thresholds when a casino or a sport betting place has to issue the W-2G for a taxpayer. For example, $1,200 or more on slots or bingo, $1,500 or more on Keno, $5,000 or more on poker tournaments is usually when a taxpayer will be subject or will receive this type of documents. Now, just because a taxpayer does not receive it, it doesn't mean that they do not have to declare it. Because as I mentioned, even if you win $10, it's a taxable income. The taxpayer must report it as other income on their tax return. for the year. Now, if the taxpayer is not recording and maintaining the wagering information, then it's going to be 100% taxable income for them, taxed at the ordinary rate, which means depending on what tax bracket that the individual is in, from 10% to 37%, that is the tax rate that they will pay on. So this is where it becomes incredibly important to maintain the records. Can it be a bank record? Absolutely. Can it be the casino's loyalty cards and it shows all the winnings and losses? It's even better because that summarizes the whole year activity for a taxpayer to make record keeping easier. So this is one of the places where it's good to sign up for a loyalty card.
I'm so glad you brought that up. We do another weekly show called Beating the House, where we report and talk about the big casino and lottery jackpots that people win that week. And I'm sure everyone has seen those pictures of people who win the big jackpot and they have this big novelty check that they're showing off. If you win at a casino, what kind of forms or what kind of paperwork should you expect from the casinos? Can you go through that one more time? Because that is such an important thing to know, especially if you win big at a casino.
Absolutely. So if the winning is over a certain dollar amount, the casinos may require to do a flat 24% withholding on the winning. So just because the taxpayer holds up the sign, that huge jackpot, some of that money will not hit the bank account right up front. The good news is, if they are in a lower tax bracket than the 24%, they will get some refund.
Okay.
But once a taxpayer wins, they have to provide identification and certain documents as a driver's license, social security card, and the casino or the establishment must issue a W-2G by January 31st to the taxpayer. One of the challenges we do see is that being everybody's so mobile lately, moving so frequently, is that once the casino signs and receives those documents, they do not know the taxpayer updated their address. They move throughout the year and they will send it to the old outdated address. So it's crucial for the taxpayers to either update it with the casino or making sure that they pull their wage and income information from the IRS's system, because the IRS has a record of every single winning, every single type of income that the taxpayer receives, and the financial institution is required to issue a tax form for it.
Okay, sticking with that idea, that's a great point you brought up. What tax forms should a gambler be aware of, even if the casino or operator does not provide them or make them available to the gambler? Are there certain types of forms that a gambler should know about, even if they're not provided by the casino?
Only the W-2G is the form, but if the casino or the gambling establishment does not issue one, the taxpayer should be maintaining their own personal record of what the winning was. So if the winning is below these dollar thresholds like the 1,200 or 1,500 that we earlier mentioned, the taxpayer still should report those because it's self-reporting. We all file our taxes based on our self-reported income. And once the government wants to do an audit, we have to substantiate and prove that this was my income, or I failed to report certain incomes in the process.
So as everyone's listening, what's important is good record keeping. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I tell everyone to keep receipts whenever they go to a casino, whether it be a room, food, toll booths. I tell people to keep track of their mileage to and from the casino and also keep records even for parking receipts. I mean, I just tell everyone to get all the records and let the accountants sort it out. When we talk about good record keeping, what should gamblers know about that? What is important to keep in mind when it comes to record keeping when you're a gambler?
So if you're a professional gambler, as you mentioned, maintain all of those records, have a photocopy of those records because some receipts may fade over time or some receipts may get displaced. One of the misconceptions for people is that if I file my tax return and I don't hear from the government in 6 months, then I'm all clear. That is not the case. Usually an audit happens 2 to 3 years past filing a return, depending on the federal or state consequences. For example, federal government, the IRS comes and audits usually about 2 to 2.5 years later after a return is filed because they just have a backlog and other activities. For example, state of California has a 4-year statute of limitation for an audit purposes. So recovering and maintaining those records are incredible, crucial to have easily and accessible location for them. So if there's an audit, you can prove what your income, your expenses were regards to that activity, whether it was a professional or if it was a hobby or a casual gambler.
You mentioned people traveling out of state to go to casinos, and I'll use myself as an example. I live in New Jersey, but the closest brick and mortar casino to me is 20 minutes away in Pennsylvania. If I win money at the casino in Pennsylvania, what does that mean for my taxes if I'm a New Jersey resident? Does me winning in Pennsylvania affect my New Jersey state income tax? How is that computed? Because like we both said, a lot of gamblers have that question because they play in a casino in a state where they don't live.
So it depends.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best answer an accountant can give you. Some states tax winnings from gambling, some states do not.
Okay.
For example, the state of California, if you win big at the lotto or anywhere, there's no state income tax. But some other states, depending on where you are residing in, that state, your home state, may end up taxing you on that winning. But be mindful that where you win the money, that state, if it is subject to state income tax, will have a state non-resident filing requirement on your winnings. So it's up to you to know the rules, and it will be sometimes a surprise if you are self-preparing the return and forgetting about those state requirements, because every state has their own tax laws, and that we have to keep in mind.
Now, one thing professional gamblers and recreational gamblers have to deal with is sometimes, even most of the time, you're going to lose. One thing gamblers have asked a lot about is, can losses be deducted? I mean, how do gamblers handle losses when it comes to filing taxes?
Absolutely, it's a deductible activity, but it's very important to keep in mind. If it is a casual gambler winning and the tax return we are talking about, the revenue, which is the winning, gets reported as other income on your 1040. And the losses will get deducted as part of the Schedule A itemized deductions. And it's only available if the taxpayer is filing an itemized deduction. So if they are on the standard one, the losses will not be accounted for because it's part of the standard deduction item. The good news is, I'm going to use an example. If I win $10,000 because I was that lucky, but it costed me $8,000 throughout the whole year of gambling throughout the different places, whether it was a casino or a racetrack course or even online, I will only be subject to a $2,000 taxable income if and should I be itemizing on my return. Now, assuming it was a flip that I have wagered over 10,000 and I only won 8, the good news is that I will have zero income tax consequences as long as I can itemize on my federal tax return. So in that case, I had $8,000 other income and I had $10,000 itemized deduction. Now, it's important that I cannot take the whole $10,000 as a deduction. I can only take up to $8,000. So the $2,000 is something that I cannot deduct. Now, that is very, very different for a professional gambler, for a professional player, because on their cases, it's a trade or business, and they end up having a loss that is suspended or can be carried forward for future years and set against future winnings.
For people who play at casinos a lot, they're usually involved in a casino's rewards program, as you brought up before. You know, they get comp rooms or food, they get bonuses, they get gifts from casinos. I was just at a casino and, you know, they were giving away a car and a trip and a free stay at one of their other resorts. I mean, how are those factors figured into a person's filings?
It is a taxable income.
Okay.
It is absolutely a reportable taxable income, and the taxpayer will receive that fantastic car that you won, that amazing holiday trip that you won. It will have a fair market value, and that will be the winning of that wagering or just being part of a raffle or something like that.
You know, the one thing I'm familiar with here in New Jersey where we have, online sports books and online casinos is there's a tab usually that has to do with tax forms on the website. The statements are based on what people play and how much they have won or lost. And I can also tell you that a lot of players don't even look at these statements. I mean, how important is it I'm talking about online players now, to take a look at what they actually download and give it to your tax professional to review these statements?
It is absolutely crucial. Like I just mentioned earlier, I had a taxpayer where they had 12 to 14 W-2Gs that they won. They could not substantiate the wagering items because they could not log into their online platform. So the entire winning was right now declared as 100% taxable income. So having a good online access, maintaining and downloading those records, and knowing where you can find your loyalty activity is absolutely crucial to help you to reduce the tax obligation you may be subject to if you are winning and you win big.
Yeah, I'm curious, especially for tax purposes, if someone is considered a professional bettor, is there a type of business entity that is more beneficial for them regarding taxes? I mean, if you're a professional gambler, would it be better off for tax reasons to file as a corporation or an LLC and then do business like that as a gambler? Is that beneficial for taxes, or does it really depend on the state you're living in?
So there are certain states where being, for example, a corporation, an S corp, is not necessarily beneficial versus being an LLC. You want to discuss that with a legal professional first before you incorporate. Incorporation should be handled by a lawyer, not by an accountant. Because it's a legal matter.
Yep.
But that example, for example, in the state of Tennessee, is being an S corp, there's an additional tax associated with it versus being in an LLC. So it is very important which state you live in and what the associated tax rules are, whether it will cost you more in taxes or less to be a corporation or as a single member LLC. Now, when it comes to be even a self-employed Schedule C unincorporated activity, it can also be beneficial for the taxpayer, again, depending on the amount of winnings that they do and depending on how active professional players they are. But at the end of the day, it's facts and circumstances for the taxpayer. And this is where a trusted financial advisor, tax advisor, will come into play to help navigate those areas and walk the taxpayer through what their best options are, especially if they are professional bettors.
I talk with a lot of professional gamblers and a lot of professional poker players and professional sports bettors, and I think it's so important for them to have a professional doing their taxes because it gets very complicated because it's a heavily regulated industry. As an accountant, how often should professional gamblers be in contact with their accountant? I mean, certainly you just don't want to drop off a box of receipts off to your accountant a week before you have to file income tax. But what's the best way to interact with your tax professional? I mean, do you give them a report or receipts every couple of months? I mean, how often should professional gamblers or even recreational gamblers be in contact with their tax professional throughout the year?
If a taxpayer is a professional bettor and it's holding themselves out as a trade or business, the most advisable is minimum on a quarterly basis because the winnings and the estimated tax payments associated, since now they are a trade or business, can fluctuate year over throughout the year. So if you attended a poker tournament that you were not originally planning to attend and you won $1 million, very different tax consequences and estimated tax payment requirements as a result. So minimum on a quarterly basis as a professional. If somebody is recreational or just enjoying the game for the entertainment and other values that they are participating in, when they win, especially if it's a lotto winning, have a discussion before you collect your prize. Understand the difference between lump sum distribution or taking even as an annuity type of payout. So it's very important to have that discussion with the tax professional upfront. Now, if you happen to win on a casino and you are claiming the car on the spot, right after that is the best time to discuss it with your taxpayer, with your tax professional to understand what the consequences are of winning that car.
How do you see the tax industry changing with the spread of gambling in this country? I mean, in the States, they're expanding their gambling industry. We just had election day where there was gambling on a lot of state ballots and a lot of referendums. How is the accounting world changing, and what do you see on the horizon with regard to taxation and gambling? I mean, do you see changes down the road to the rules and regulations that a gambler has to deal with?
Absolutely. And it's going to be probably more complex over
Really?
time. And that is where, if a taxpayer is a professional bettor, they really want to understand what happens when they go out of state, especially if they don't live in the same state they play in, and understand what the winnings are. Because even when they go overseas, they will be subject to their worldwide income on the federal level for taxation purposes, minimum. So it is getting more complex. Having a trusted advisor and the support behind you is crucial to maximize your savings and make sure that your records are up to date should there be an audit or a review of the activities that you are claiming on your return.
I'm curious. We were mentioning the spread of gambling, and since 2018, sports betting has really blown up. I mean, has the gamblers and the sports bettors gotten better with regard to the information they need in filing their taxes? I know rules and regulations are constantly changing, but have they become more aware as the years gone on about the rules of taxation and what they need to file better taxes or more complete tax documents?
On the professional side of our clientele, we see a much more robust and improved reporting ability.
Okay.
On our novice player side, it has become a little bit more challenging because the ease of access to online platform, and especially those sign-on bonuses that taxpayer get,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes those are taxable incomes. So if somebody gets those additional coins or additional betting availabilities, that may be treated as winning for the taxpayer. So, and that's easy to forget. Oh, I signed up, I got $1,000 as free money to play, and I forgot about that. That may be a taxable income for me.
What has been the biggest question that gamblers ask you as an accountant with regard to taxes? I mean, taxes can be a very complicated issue, but what has been some of the big questions that gamblers have asked you with regard to their taxes?
So it mainly on our casual gambler side, how can I be an actual professional gambler, and how can I treat this winning as an income, as a professional activity rather than on my other income category? And that is a long, hard discussion, especially with online platforms, social media. There's an incredible amount of misinformation out there. So going to your trusted source, who is your tax preparer, your financial advisor, your state and local federal tax agencies on their website, sometimes they post additional information, and educate yourself from there. So that has been our biggest challenge, that the misinformation is widespread, and help the taxpayer understand that what they read or heard online may not necessarily be accurate if it's not from a trusted source like yours.
Well, before we know it, it's tax time, and it's going to be here pretty soon. Other than calling you immediately, what should gamblers be doing right now to prepare their tax filings? I mean, we never want to wait to the last minute. So what information should they be gathering right now in order to file their taxes properly?
Start collecting your records from the different casinos and gambling establishments that you know you're not going to go back. Make sure that your online access is readily available and you can download those statements. You may have heard that there's an incredible shortage of accountants out there. People are finding very hard time to locate a professional to support their activities when it comes to filing taxes and or even doing the business bookkeeping and reporting matters. Being proactive, start reaching out to a tax advisor to see if they are taking on clients, to make sure that you can get the proper support by the time you're ready to file the taxes. Those are the two most crucial ones. And if you have not used a tax professional in the past, it is worth to have once in a while getting a consultation by a tax advisor to guide you what you can do better, especially if you are a self-filer. There's nothing wrong with self-filing, but knowing the rules from a professional will take you a lot further than trying to search online for answers that may not be accurate.
Miklos, we're running out of time, but if people want to reach out to you, how do they get in contact with you? And do you have a website for your accounting firm, MiklosCPA?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. Our website is www.mikloscpa.com, and our phone number is 213-283-9002.
Miklos Ringbauer, founder of Miklos CPA, thank you so much for coming on and talking about taxes and what gamblers have to do in order to file properly. Taxes are a very important issue in the gambling industry, and I always say that people should consult a professional when it comes to their taxes, especially when it comes to income derived from gambling. Thanks for coming on and giving us some incredibly useful information.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
That'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on The Turnpike.